Hello, there are Latino families I don't know the names of with the intelligence community on off Town Line Drive involved with a Mike Pandolf. A whole bunch of people tied to a Mike Pandolf since they were kids. Involved with the people putting fake things in databases at campuses. All sides of criminal and civil cases they're using to plant collusion slash S. Also with other communicated. Then nature communicates, and then America's founders communicated behind James Madison and his plan. They're adapting too. I recorded them with tactically delusions raw, criminally foreign influence readings of sciences and of reality and of American history with people at Hartford Hospital, increasingly involved intercities with wire and mail crimes and intercultural racketeering worse than war crimes, putting people in fake and changed conversations, putting all sides of, in other words, all on a mass scale, they're putting only capable of stacking fake things in databases. There is cultural racketeering. Real culture is how we have black people's whites of eyes, the same color eyes at the same exact time, and different color eyes at the same time, per that projecting this. Because it is also projecting it is us, but while it is not. But anyway, while as the other species bodies, why and how they have two eyes, for example. Completely even fish have two eyes. Quality aspects in nature, distinct but also non-distinct and simultaneously. Per that further hyper simultaneously relative as science. Also, relativity itself slash hyper relativity is being and has been shown to us by nature itself. But we have had use slash S of theories with the syntax of the sciences and the names of the people of the sciences, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, a certain type of victim slash hyper victim shock and awe from off those locations, self value, collusion slash S with recorded use slash S of it that they only understand to an extent. But it's recorded per phenomenon that we could all observe and understand together, black pupils. We have to have mandated law proper. I put, for example, some things that are counter obfuscated because of the federal evidence's crime action methods between police forms, where and how that of the same form with different departments, but also with where and how that can be used to show. Like, for example, a retired judge, Napolitano, of Judging Freedom. I recorded how there are crime methods as also digital crime methods with the rights to lie and the rights to hide lies and the rights to hide uses of motivations for it, even true, to hide other ones. A whole bunch of people tied to a former Mayor Gold and his family member and mayor and one before him or more before him in conversations with people tied to me. They will tell you we barely had words at all, and some of them had it faked. They're increasingly faking conversations between people, putting them fake ties, fake the way. Why would they think about it? As people enter cities who are connections with this, with timed use slash estimate roles. We have the counters to the border problems and the borders problems as collusions with themselves at campuses, including medical and fire campuses. This is relative to how people like Judge Napolitano and his guests speak about each other as good and bad. Try to qualify that. And the speaker in the link I put on there, speaking as a Brown, speaking for Brown, as I believe a comedian or actor who has roles with all kinds of Latin countries. But still, we have, in other words, there are Spanish people more white than me. And how white is assigned white, leaving out the breaching methods assignment of white and black in international sciences and meetings where they had wars, but at the same time, they had the nature of peace as collusions too, with slavery entrenched northern colonies and southern colonies, and that was sustained before America's founders' parents were even born. And then America's founders were born. It was already perfected from before that, too, from some ancient times. That's the excuse. That's the only excuse for England. But they don't make it because they don't even understand the history of English. There's a complete possession over the fact, human nature, quality, aspects in nature of torture, extortion, and fact, human nature, slavery upon the bodies as countries A through Z as the phenomenon of them being and having been assigned since before the foundations used as systems tactical ulterior from how nature has thus the species body of individual bodies and all group differences generated by it, except for where and how we have been and stay systems tactically ulterior from its own, where it has a complete conversation about its identity relationship to itself, and the value of that, which is relative to positive and negative the ways we know, but also distinctly where it is not juxtaposed with matter and with space that we know to the extent of. It has a different, distinct identity relationship to itself too. And they can both be positive at the same time. But this is per an order, like this is the order, the difference of the value of the order of the finite or of the finite, the smallest detail or the order of the finite. The order of what is active, progressive, to the extent, like for example, that we could discern as truth, grouped reality, true always, and progressive, like the value of the seasons that are not here. But anyway, see, more important is where and how it shows us about the future. See, we have all natures of speculation, also sensed by this breaching method our countries A through Z, all groupings of humanity, tactical ulterior from capable of entertaining that and affording to be, let alone to protract convictions by that which is appreciating proper how it generates and generated. Not just more probably, but demonstrably. All differences. Other species' bodies are also individual bodies of a distinct species of individual bodies with group differences. The other species' bodies have no criminal foreign influences, especially ones with self-valued roles, being and having been used remotely at countries A through Z. Their differences, the difference of wealth or poverty. That difference is measured and maintained. The nature debate with it. It contains quality aspects of nature that can't defend itself and afford to be, let alone to protract. Short words with integrity, correlation / hypercorrelation proper. For example, as the value of the Constitution unabridged and hyper additionally, simultaneously. Why and how we have rights that are too numerous to have to list down. Why it has to be written that way. Why we have to change how the communications, the changing of the communications of our founders. Remote uses, self-value of the words of our founders. Leaving out the breaching method that was measuring and maintaining those words forced to a great extent. And having to entertain where they did not want to entertain. Forced, measured, and maintain self-value uses of their words, leaving out what they declassified about that, leaving out what they declassified about the breaching method. Black people. Help the algorithm see. In other words. And don't blame people wrong, because in other words, the FBI is putting leverage on all the internet companies. Some ways they put the leverage on the FBI, and the difference of that is measured and maintained self-value by the breaching of because other police forms, the difference of the branch of the government individually grouped and together, and the difference of that of the intelligence criminally involved. or the location of the, and next to corrections and judicial officers, because your use of location slash the use of the value slash value progression. It is this way at countries A through Z. This is why and how we have suits and ties manifest, counters and exceptions, and the nature of debate regarding such things. Like, for example, if we bring it up, they would leave out and be incapable of having brought in properly how the suburbs were designed before America's founders were born. And I learned in notes that if even if it was made up by the professor, which I doubt, in other words, but it is plausible to an extent. We know everything was influenced by criminally foreign influence uses of those databases associated with all records. But we know that the Constitution unabridged and why we and how we have rights are too numerous to have to list them. And why and how we shouldn't have to argue with people who want to debate what they feel about America, especially with music playing. After having been recorded playing music about the Declaration of Independence and leaving out James Madison's plan and the founders behind him, and how that forced then George Washington agreed to use that plan, and they forced the rest of the founders, distinct from the rest of the presidents. They forced the rest of the founders. And that was also forced only capable of being because of the forced by nature, three natures of Native American founders. The ones arguing because they thought they knew better what to do, how to respond to this factory nature. They were physically, and ones that didn't know what to do. And no one knew what to do. Not because of intelligence, because of a singular method that came from before modern religious messengers. It is inseparable from all subjects. How long are we going to have people all the sciences, including the arts, even comedy and actors, still referring to themselves as brown people? Black, white, all exceptions, collusions, leaving out the breaching methods, roles with that, needs for that, to hide behind and through. Ugh. In other words, nature's identity, its body itself is showing us. We have the same color eyes, different color eyes, same time, and a breaching method is involved here. And both nature's body and the breaching method is forced left out. Instead, that negative, in other words, and that hyper positive is they're blamed the opposite, the pretended other. In other words, you guys make everything, you put money. The breaching method measures and maintains when you guys use all sides too. Use the whole array of people counter each other what they think with reparations. Injunctive reliefs. I'm not even a lawyer. They're greater than and more finite than what reparations are value as. And while they're as the value of reparations too. Injunctive reliefs. You guys can't you can't afford injunctive reliefs language to be brought free for you. And this is A through Z of the human species body, especially the people out the cities. The suburbs were designed before America's founders were born, with torture, extortion, and slavery entrenched. We have evidences of this. There are roles self-value with criminally foreign influence takes on reality at each age of factory nature. And pretend with the styles of pretending other or keeping it blamed on other things others themselves. Recorded clearer than day, being haven't been used remotely consciously, but only to an extent. Our side's knowing, and the other sides. They're more involved here. In other words, and that's why on a mass scale you can discern When you hear identities of law people associated with speak about motivations, they're making it mean what it's not supposed to mean. They're condensing things and leaving out details, making everything, and as collusion slash S, mass predicate acts with facts, methods, roles. The difference of the branches of government individually grouped it together too. Group their predicate acts methods together, and together act countries A through Z, and the prisons tied to them, and the state's offices, the corrections offices, and judicial and branch offices of Connecticut in a way that is interstates and has been simultaneously internationally, but also with a hyper international measured and maintain use slash uses of the human fact, human nature, being and having been entertained through and as systems tactical ulterior from those assigned by nature's identity itself. Differences A through Z, therefore names A through Z as its own differences, as names of its own difference and quality of diffusion. As that, in other words, we are prevented free speech offensively to defend, and we are still sensed through a method that recorded how it works. How all stupid jerks jump into conversations where people try to use the hyper evidential, where it is evidence itself, being and having been, where all sides of criminal and civil cases in the courts names themselves, in the news names themselves could be and were and are planting fake news, to use President Trump's phrase, for example. But it is also news predicate acts. But it is also news predicate acts methods. But it is also the difference of the criminality there as the motivations for roles with it, or the ones next to them, or the ones driving by, or their sources. This is exploiting where and how we are value slash value progression along roads and routes, and with motivations. This breaching method knew that nature itself would increasingly demonstrate to each human being that a human fact, human nature breaching method is one of the things that is true always, that slavery was about. For example, when this breaching method knew that slavery, torture, extortion method was against everyone sickly distinctly, but it measured and maintained and had already sustained roles with the methods plural, with its singular method to keep that other pretended, self pretended for itself, to keep itself left up from the nature with nature's demonstrations, blame the other things others themselves. The breaching method itself as a scientific value taken from, stolen from the communications of James Madison and of the founders before him, with the plan that George Washington agreed to use, which is essential to understanding where and how slavery was left entrenched in northern colonies and southern colonies. Black pupils. The nature of debate contains quality aspects in nature, treatments of things like principles, exactly the way the breaching method needs, with criminally foreign, reliant upon criminally foreign influence, fact, human nature, quality aspects in nature, and tactical delusions raw. Collusion slash S. Clearer than day. All kinds of natures of organized crime with medical locations and police forms associated with a Leahy family, involved with the Dr. Shamsi Ali too, with intercity people with Glastonbury, Rocky Hill, Newington, and Wethersfield police have some wire crimes with the Leahy family. And they recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed the Wethersfield police chief put them to do tricks to pretend they wanted to get him in trouble, but then pretend other and put fake things. It's unclear. They're switching and forging names. He faked the transcripts with me, fake conversations with me. More than one person in a Leahy family, apparently women too. I believe there are two people with the name Brendan Leahy. I don't know, in other words. But he has a father. I don't know if that, because Rick C.M. Faglione is one of the ones with his father, and a Brian Silver with a Connecticut's district court and New Britain Superior Court. Involved planting evidences also with a Justin Klavinskas and a Mark Violet on all sides of Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut. Also with people that have been putting fake things with former mayors from Wethersfield, putting fake things in databases. Also these and as medical offenders of kids. Also with judges doing this all along the Pearl Turnpike and Route 3, for example, and Wethersfield Avenue and Franklin Avenue are people involved with FBI and courts and a whole bunch of different countries leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and since also involved with differences racketeering, worse than war crimes, which is one of the things also too, true always, that black people that the laws that were in place even after the revolution was won and even through the American Civil War and after it is recorded there were still and still are use remotely self value roles with self value, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought, readings of statutes, precedents, instances, circumstances, and identities of relativity, and including individual ones like the breaching method itself and like America itself. Clearer than day, in other words. So, in other words, they're shells games. They'll avert criminal enterprises, private ones. They'll run into high line progressions. Look on YouTube, look up Los Solitos in Hartford, Connecticut. And they focus on the part right next to Hartford Hospital. And look, they have little houses there, and the porch just opens up, and you're on where Wethersfield Avenue, Port, and Franklin Avenue, Port Ready to Hartford. That's for little kids, and that's the solutions to it. When this was made to unfold, you guys communicated, other than our founders communicated, to have communicated for Wethersfield, Connecticut, and for Hartford, Connecticut. George Washington had to leave slavery entrenched northern colonies and southern colonies, even with all the help of James Madison and the founders behind him and his plan. And we were supposed to understand this, why and how. We're supposed to understand that there would be uses of their words, self-value, having been used by the breaching method, self-value, leaving what they declassified about it out so they can have natures of debate about research that are relative to uses of readings of statutes and precedents that are and have been criminally foreign influenced, tactically delusions wrought. Increasingly, the people with the prisons tied to the interbranch and intelligence have lie progressions, have needs to hide lie progressions at crime scene, at all location, at collusion / yes. Increasingly, the difference between at crime scenes or at campuses, including campuses as crime scenes, and the difference of that. It is not by accident people pretend on a mass scale that politics is what it is not, even though nature gave and gives us black people's means whites of eyes to discern right through this. See, but we guys would all could discern together. Quinnipiac University has roles with some judges and prosecutors and foreign and domestic military that have been putting tricks and pretending passions and have people speak about it and recording that to hide and lie about what came first and make people not know the other people's names so they don't know how to respond to it. Like Quinnipiac University involved with a Kevin Harris also has roles with medical offenders of kids. One's named Harris and Leahy, who attached me to fake conversations with himself and with others with some Wethersfield police are forging and switching names. And they made confessions about this. But they won't get onto paper with the courts involved with them through time, too, with all natures of organized crime. These are also people involved with federal crimes with unions and names next to them and the difference of that involved with it. Also with 2 speech class teachers I have involved with them with predicate acts and predicate acts methods at Washington, D.C. locations and interstates, and with people with the World Trade Center and spots next to it, including a court there, as people involved with WFSB. Also within as a whole bunch of people tied to a Claudia Scalora, with other tons of people tied to a Claudia Scalora involved with the World Trade Center attack, and with people with the name Demaro and Scalora that said that they were cousins. And Weathersfield Police and Whiting Forensics increasingly has wire crimes with them. And they said there's someone with the name O'Neill involved. Also, the Connecticut intelligence, like the news, has been planting evidences with people know O'Neill involved. And there is O'Neill involved with going after the reported Osama bin Laden. So they have counters with the collusions. They have collusions with the counters other ways too. And there's, in other words, a whole bunch of people tied to probate court's family members too are involved also with the Schedule family. And I don't even know all the names of the brothers of a Mike Delfera and a Chris Delfera. They were influenced to pretend they knew me by acting so other people could look and pretend it was I knew each other in other locations. And where there were exceptions in other locations, there were planting evidences. And there were collusions with a whole bunch of different countries and other things that they don't know about. And it's manifest that way because of how the breaching method has rolls that way. And with you guys replacing what our founders in what nature communicates. They have identity theft. They lied about themselves and me with people next to Town Line Drive locations, the shopping center there. And these are people who probate courts, judges, family members, because of how probate court judges have roles with elderly homes. They're locked in there, just like prisons. And prisons have a torture method manifest with their identities of differences as like a private associated with or with government. But where and how the government is criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. Predicate acts with facts methods worse than war crimes. Worse than crimes of the prisoners that were put there. Need to pretend not to realize. So pretending they are the way they are, which is criminally foreign influence, because they're not following the rules too. They're following the rules, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, and self-value haven't been used remotely, not following the rules and pretending other. Sandy Hook is leaking. It's plausible and demonstrable they probably have their roles with the fire campuses there. And the fire campus is there too. As their roles with the names increasingly with Whiting Forensics, involved with the Joshua Julian and a whole bunch of people at Harvard Hospital with a Mark Violet, faked conversations with me. And they have roles of people that work with the Parks and Recreation through time, who have various natures of organized crimes with kids and with their family members, with identity thefts, frauds with a whole bunch of different countries, differences, racketeering, worse than war crimes. There are roles with programs, with elderly and with kids too, and with courts. And as alternative to the other prisons, the difference of that was is used criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw too. There's a torture method against themselves that is relative to where and to how they have roles, with the torture method of ourselves through its method. But it's to understand that we have to discern how it has a bunch of methods plural at the same time. Worse than the things they pretend they're against with passions and emotions in the news that they also fake, and then they put it on YouTube too, like WFSB, Fox Connecticut News, and WTNH. But they're also recording, confessing, demonstrating, confirming. Like for example, the FBI is next to WTNH in New Haven. There are proofs that Fred Grisey might have been associated with that location. I'm not saying it was real. Around the time they had the reports of not the guy who chopped a girl up with a sword inside you, yeah, outside and the streets that had it reported like that. But there's also a Sandra Spada, and there are intelligence people interstates involved with a Fred Gruzet and his neighbors. I don't know the names of through time involved further with sexual and medical offenders of kids. And he's one of the ones from other areas I didn't know at all who sought me on my street. I found out because they're putting me to fake ties and natures of ties to kids who I didn't even have class with in my grammar school. They're putting fake things in databases, and they did a couple little tricks with my teachers that are in demonstration of the same thing, but they've been pretending other from backgrounds. They're putting fake. The intelligence community is being and haven't been used remotely worse than criminally incompetent, tactically delusions raw. We have means out of nowhere for better than efficiency. They've been scams at Hartford Hospital with only a few dozen people, more scams than there have been than there are streets in Hartford and houses on them. Probably more than there are people in two. Definitely more than there are people in houses and streets on Hartford. And others being haven't been communicated sickly distinctly at campuses A through Z. This breaching method measures and maintains everyone self-value rules, fighting to defend their positions, wanting to send their kids to other schools, incapable of defending that and of affording discern. Short words proper with the impositions upon the kids as campuses A through Z, especially where it's more concentrated, right in the cities. See, we have means that come out of nowhere better than free. You guys want to do it through the tax and have more collusions, all kinds of predicate acts with roles, all kinds of natures of organized crime roles, originally and still only capable of being entertaining with this breaching method left. That's what started the British Civil War, besides our founders. With Civil War would have been anyway, but it would have been psychos, criminally used remotely, criminally foreign influence too, with differences. North and South, same thing. Yeah, we were used remotely, criminally foreign influence / hyper criminally foreign influence. You can't speak now. You speak for politics, fake punks. That's all you're allowed to be. File mandated law. Get me up for fake conversations, WFSB. Let's go. Let's go. There are more people involved with Phil Cololo swerving in the street and rolls with someone screaming out one of the names with the Puerto Rican guy tied to him. And the timing of it. First time I ever saw him on my street outside of a car. I'm pretty sure I might have seen him in a car one time. I wasn't even sure if it was him. Don't pretend I ever saw him on my street when I was a kid. Because there are interbranch have been planting evidences with him involved with a whole bunch of different countries. And people at Whiting Forensics further involved with proven child abusers, leaders of kids, First Forest. Bob Chase confessed him involved with it. There's going to be problems because the people involved with him also with violence and bug spray threats and threats to hurt me physically. So we're going to have a problem because he's never been out there needing to hide lipoaggressions. And you have cops in court switching and forging names and refusing to get on paper. So please get this to the Judge Napolitano. Get the Connecticut interbranch on paper, one name in sequence. I'm on a response for the letter I wrote to them. And I'm going to show you because they took away the emails. Watch what I caught them doing with the cops forging and switching names and with the retired police chiefs and medical offenders and people with the courts, like with this Brian Silver and their kids, involved on Facebook too, with child offenders, with this Joshua Julian, and with the police up and the principal upskirt nature, and more untimely deaths and murder rolls intercities with the same ones that brought it up, the same ones that were planted in Evansville, all sides of my house, intercities. The same ones with the wire crimes of the Wethersfield police switching names down. Get them on paper, fake branches, bow, and there is seed. And fall, then there is seed. Build law. For real, people. In other words, when you speak of culture, let nature lead that conversation. Ye species, body, trade. At once we move. We're in the species before our founders were born, before there were cars. let alone cars, trains. In other words, in other words, your species body move, your heart will beat, or God, Lisavati. 10. The pantheism. Pantheism is a function by the republic for which we stand, but it is led by the hyper invisible but still discernible. Discern who disbelieves. See, we need who disbelieves act. I'm not even a lawyer. That will for we could use that to force who disbelieves. For example, the having black people's whites of eyes, we have means to discern for the generation of it and how it communicates that slavery was about a predicate acts with facts delivery system method, and with descriptions of it, also the difference of that, or how it was also, it is also a criminal insidiousness nature delivery system method. Criminal insidious natures of positive treatments and negative treatments at the same time. In other words, there are police like with the name Demoro who and Kalal, people associated with the name Demoro and Kalal and Kerr, who are a former Mayor Gold, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed he has a Joe IL involved with him, planting evidences with little kids' campuses and people involved with child abusers, leaders of the kids years apart, but further involved. And that was before the principal child abuser was proven. And there were more people involved with that. And people tied to a Sandra and Antonetta Spada brought up the name, brought up a big guy was sitting, we're talking about being in the corner of Knott Street and Walker Hill to make a fake ties to me. I didn't even respond. He doesn't know me at all. I don't even know his name. He knows my name. People that live there, apparently, I don't know their names. Tied to the Spada. And these are they had a judge named Spada with the probate court judges. And they had intimate ties with De Ferros per my neighbors. And then they were playing games with that. And probably, I don't know how I knew that. And for that, in other words, they're put and they also have at the same time she had another boyfriend, one of them with but these are with what's his name, also with the corner of Southstein Highway and Town Line Drive, a schedule. He also has roles with his they know my name, a schedule family, but they're with military and foreign and domestic medical families and military families on Valley Crest and off of it, on a corner on Valley Crest. They have also on Morgan Circle with a Kerr family. Has roles with wire crime acts and methods with police through time. Falsified police, federal evidence crimes with them. With judges and prosecutors. Also with people with next to the sides of the state capitol. And I never had a class with a Czech Casper. I never saw him on my grammar school campus in my life. They made one exception by making me look in the classroom. Well, but Mr. Potter recordedly involved. No, I only had good feelings to Mr. Potter, and I wasn't in his class at the time. I think I already had him as a teacher, but he's got families reportedly involved with state judicial branch officers, involved with some Mendez police, and ones with the name Demoro, who have been lying to him about me, with other classmates and people all along Route 175 have been planting evidences and roles on and off campuses with it, predicate acts with facts methods, and with and as leaders of the kids, and or the difference of people talking to the leaders of the kids as collusions with it. Increasingly, there's a Robert Rodriguez who works at a place called On the Border. Probably a good restaurant. But in other words, and there's a Daryl Chandler also with that shopping center in Rocky Hill, Connecticut. And there's a I don't know Daryl Chandler's sister. There's a Chandler family involved with foreign and domestic countries with intelligence that have been putting fake things in databases and screening their roles with overt criminal enterprises and private ones and various natures of crime scenes that are used effectively to keep the different natures of agencies and courts, families, and their neighbors criminally poor and impulse tactically delusions raw at the same time with the news collusions and per much worse. And so this breaching method knew that it would hurt people in New York City and areas sustained sickly distinctly, and then the ones of it in that trap pretended other by the only allowed to be heard formal fact cheaping natures and or relative to where and to how really why how everyone changes and fakes what we say are short words and the value of what they think about the protraction of our long words and all exceptions too. See, people that are doing what this breaching method knew they were going to do, and while in other words, like make exceptions because the interbranch and foreign at the same time are showing us that our racketeering nature is worse than war crimes, with exceptions in exception nature relative to their subject treatments clearer than day, not just politics. They're criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions raw. Collusions with that fake identity of sophistication, as science's voices originally and still. They're replacing and change with nature and our founders communicated. You don't read our founders' words, leaving out what's actually what they were declassified about it. You don't force the nature debate the way you guys do. Oh, well, the expert says this, and then we're debating just because someone's an expert or not. Oh, you know more than Einstein. There's more than Einstein says there's only theories on relativity. Relativity, every subject is about the identity of relativity / hyperrelativity. It is the one that has the other species bodies with black people's whites bodies, and distinctly from ourselves, but also non-distinctly, simultaneously / hyper simultaneously. It is the one that has us demonstrated too that we've had criminally foreign impulse tactically delusions raw achievements of positive and negative and of names. You guys are going to leave out how that breaching method sickly distinctly hurt those kids. For example, as the ones as young men, sustained that hurt them sickly distinctly. As the one young men who guys put in jail, for example, right when they become young men in New York City. And you say, well, that's a bad kid. You guys are sick mothers. You guys could leave out. You guys need that torture. You need roles with that torture, extortion, slavery method to keep even, adult black women educated, and capable of thinking. On the other hand, only capable of blaming a white man. In other words, styles like this as collusion / S right at formal, private, and interbranch locations too. Ugh. In other words, they can't defend how the differences of them being the ones worst responsible for it, or the ones that come with their cases with all kinds of things. Because all that is being used to change things and hide other names' involvements with such, including with the stacking predicate acts at each campus I went to with the names and roles with the names next to them. And that was this. What did that was a whole bunch of was hyper foreign mixed with foreign, and this is also affected by me forcing positions with it. In other words, intercities, you guys made confessions about roles with this. And this is also relative to where you have subject treatments so sickly, pretended it's politics. Politics is not why there are predicate acts with facts roles. Criminally foreign influence, fact, nature, quality aspects, collusions with the use of location / S, let alone at cities. Clearer than days, the little kids in the suburbs could discern how the breaching methods affecting the identity of value progression in the suburbs. Clearer than day. Kids can discern going away. Just like how like the worms are no longer coming out of the soil because the soil is becoming dead, and they're no longer walking into the bodies of water like puddles for the worms to get when the bugs aren't abundant in the rain, when the rain's around. And they're no longer going on the surface of the water with it when the rain is on the surface of the water. And so the worms in healthy ground used to just walk into the water and feed the fish. And see, Native Americans, before the sciences became criminally foreign tactical delusions, forced roles. Otherwise, that body was sensed, even if it was a majority of people, even if it was everyone. And then that was sustained. And then America's founders came here. And because everyone was fighting from what was forcing international monitored conversations at locations, areas, and states, with the difference of that or of overt criminal enterprises, private ones, we have to discern what nature's showing us there's a hyper criminal foreign influences, so to speak. Even if you want to believe, for example, as a scientific value. Okay, this is too long, this video. No one's here anyway. Thank you. Actually, you should hear it. That's what you think.